The playoffs are inching ever closer. We do have some injury concerns, which we'll get to later, but the Magic are playing 5-game series. We'll break the schedule down, break everything down into 5-minute segments. Not quite. We'll get to that on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is March 27th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to break down the season into 5-game segments because that's what the Magic are doing. How this approach is helping them get ready for the playoffs and measure themselves while keeping them focused on the task at hand. And then we'll actually break the season down into 5-game segments the rest of the way. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. If you are like me, whenever the Orlando Magic All Access comes out, and shout out to the Magic's video content team that puts that stuff together, it's been fantastic. Getting a little bit behind the scenes look at the Magic, and especially now that we're getting close to the playoffs, to turn those around much faster. So really appreciate the work that they do. If you watch that, they covered the first half of the homestand, the first 4 games of this homestand. Already, this 8-game homestand that's so critical for the team. And at the end of the game against the Pelicans, which go back, listen to our episode from Friday, was a really huge win. It was a really big deal. Very solid victory for the Magic. Jamal Mosley breaks the huddle and says, by the way, our 5-game breakdown, we went 5-0. That's an interesting concept, an interesting thing to think about. And players have talked about it various times. I asked them more specifically about it on Tuesday. What do these 5-game breakdowns mean? Well, before we actually do the exercise, let's explain what the Magic are trying to do. Obviously, this is a young team that has never been through a playoff race. It's never been through a playoff chase, never been through playoff pressure. They have never had to deal with the anticipation for the postseason to begin and the pressure that comes with it. They've never had to play these style of playoff games, these series, these games against quality opponents, the attention to detail that is necessary. And look, the Magic just had 2 days to practice. Physically, they seem to be very light as the Magic are trying to preserve bodies. We'll get to injuries here in a minute. As the Magic are trying to preserve bodies, but still very detail-oriented, very much about making sure they know and understand the details of what they're trying to do, even as they try to preserve bodies and preserve their stamina and their fitness for the rest of the season. But what the Magic are trying to do with these 5-game breakdowns is twofold. One, simulate a little bit what a playoff series might be like. Yes, you're not playing the same opponent, and right now the Magic are home a lot. But what you're trying to do is say, we want to win 3 of the next 5. We want to win this series 3-2. Would love to win it 4-1. Would love to win it 5-0. But you ultimately want to make adjustments. It is a way for this team to measure themselves, to say, in this 5-game set, we want to be a great defensive team, which the Magic typically are. We want to improve our offense. We want to limit turnovers. It allows them to focus in and hone in on ways that they can improve. Now, I will grant this over the 5-game set that ended with that game against the Pelicans, Magic got worse at turnovers. Not a good sign. Their turnover rate went up each game, but their defense was still elite. Their offense was solid too. The Magic played some really good basketball during that 5-game stretch, and obviously they won all 5 games. Beat Toronto, since the loss to the Pacers, they beat Toronto twice. They beat Brooklyn. They beat They took care of their business. And at the end of the day, that's like what matters. The wins are what matters. And that's going to be the ultimate lesson. But the other part of doing these 5-game breakdowns, the other part of focusing in more intently and more deliberately on small sets of games is meant to keep the magic in the moment. We'll talk some standings here in a minute. We don't want to ignore what those look like, but the team does not want that information as much as we try to feed it to them and get their response and reaction to it. And I'm sure as much as the Magic do actually know this, because the standings are posted somewhere in the back, I am sure. It's still about making sure the team is not looking too far ahead. That with these 11 games left, the Magic can stay present. That the Magic can make sure they're focusing on the task at hand and the adjustments that are going to be necessary to win that game. What are the Magic going to have to do coming off their loss to the Sacramento Kings against the Golden State Warriors, a team with very similar offensive philosophies? That's the thing that they have to focus on right now. And when they get to the playoffs, obviously, that's the trick. The whole trick to the playoffs is staying present, not getting overwhelmed by the ups and downs of the game, not sitting pretty when you win or being too down when you lose, knowing that you have another game and another opportunity, and knowing that you have to get better as the playoffs and that playoff series continue, because the other team is going to get better too. This is the Magic's way of taking a deep breath, ignoring and blocking out all the other noise, and playing to the best of their abilities. This has been a constant refrain too. This has been a constant thing that the team has talked about, that the team has mentioned over the last few weeks. Their goal is to play their best basketball in March and April. Their goal is to make this their best basketball, to make this their stand. And guess what? They've been doing it. Yes, there are things to clean up. The turnovers, the poor shooting against Sacramento. You live with make or misses, as we talked about earlier this week, but they played well enough to win those games. And they're not getting blown out. They're not getting run off the floor. They are competitive, and they believe they can win every game. In fact, I would argue, and I'll probably do this on OrlandoMagicDaily.com, I would argue not that the Magic should be favored in every game the rest of the season. The Magic should believe they can win every game the rest of the season, except for the one in Milwaukee. They should believe that, but we'll give them a pass on that one, because that back-to-back needs to be thrown directly into the sun. The Magic should feel capable of winning every single game remaining on their schedule, because guess what? They are capable of winning every single game remaining on their schedule. And that is an empowering thing. It can be an overwhelming thing, but getting the team to focus in on how they're playing today, on what they need to improve for tomorrow, and not on what's coming 3 weeks from now. That's the biggest task that Jamal Mosley has for this team, because we'll find out soon enough whether they are ready for the playoffs. As much as I think this group has played well and felt playoff-like atmospheres, they don't know. They don't. I'm sorry. I love these guys. I look at them and I see, like, y'all are babies. Y'all don't know what the playoffs are really going to be like. Honestly, it's been a while for me. 2019 was a long time ago. I forget what the playoffs are like. You forget what that feeling is and that intensity that those games bring. You forget how much the energy ratchets up and how much you have to be focused in on the details. So however the Magic can simulate this, however the Magic can figure this stuff out or mimic it, that's a huge difference. That is a huge key for this team moving forward. And it will be a big part of what the Magic are trying to accomplish here the rest of the season. We'll sit down and actually break down what those 5-game breakdowns for the Magic look like and what they have to do to adjust from their Game 1 loss to the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fits only available to U.S. customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day. Every day for your next listen, be sure to check out the Locked On Sport Today 24/7 streaming channel. If you have Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, you're probably like me and hate having to turn the volume down because of all the shouting. No one likes shouters on TV. It's terrible TV. I'm sorry. I was a TV producer. Shouting on TV stinks. So check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I think it's important to, if you've listened to the show, you know that I like to take what the team tells us and try and translate that and use their language. This is the language that they're using. Let's use that language and figure out what it all means. So we know the Magic are now looking at 5-game breakdowns. So they're breaking down the season, what's left of the season, into 5-game sets. And so I think personally, the goal is to go at least 3-2 in these sets to win the series, so to speak. Now, we'll get to the standings here in a minute because I do think that point is worth looking at. The Magic have work to do. They got 11 games left. If they go 7-4 the rest of the way or 6-5 the rest of the way, they're probably going to maintain their spot at 5. They're probably going to maintain the 5 seed, but they're obviously in the running to do a little bit more than that. So I think I will say this. I think 3-2 is a baseline. I think 6 more wins, that'll get them to 48 on the season. I do think that is a baseline. That is what we should expect this team to do. But what do these 5-game breakdowns look like? What does this actually kind of feel like to look at a series and say, okay, this is where the Magic have to go next, or this is where the team is heading next. So this current 5-game set started Saturday against Sacramento. So this 5 games is home versus Sacramento, home versus Golden State, home versus the Clippers, home versus the Grizzlies, home versus Blazers. It'll take us to the end of this homestand. When I saw this homestand come out, even back in August, but especially now that we've approached this 8-game homestand, I felt like 6-2 was very possible. 5-3 was the bare minimum. Obviously, they have 1 loss on the homestand. Doing pretty good so far. I felt like the goal should have been take care of your business against the sandwich games. So Toronto, Charlotte to start off with, took care of those games. Relatively easy wins for the Magic. Finish off with Saturday versus Memphis, Monday versus Portland. Take care of your business. This teams have been very good against teams under 500. They took care of their business. Very happy. I think that they could take care of their business in those games. The Memphis game on Saturday will be tougher than you think. To me, the key for anything now is how do you do against playoff competitors, teams that are in the playoff chase, that are playoff caliber teams. And unfortunately for the Magic, or maybe fortunately, the Magic do not have a lot of these teams left. I think that's why we highlighted the New York and Indiana set, because not only were they 2 games against teams that the Magic were directly competing with and snapped a 5-game win streak, Magic just snapped another 5-game win streak against a playoff caliber opponent. But it just felt like there weren't, especially against Eastern Conference teams, a lot of those games left. To me, when I entered this homestand, I felt like the Magic had to split the middle 4 games at minimum. So they're 1-1 right now in those middle 4 games. I know I'm breaking the 5-game thing here, but they're 1-1 in these middle 4 games. In order to go 3-2 during this 5-game set, the Magic must win one of their next 2 games against the Warriors and the Clippers. The Warriors currently sitting in 10th in the Western Conference. The Clippers, I believe they're 5th or 6th. Let me get the standings out real fast. Clippers are 4th in the West. So two pretty solid teams here. Golden State's Golden State. They're struggling a little bit right now. They're going to be on a back-to-back coming from Miami. So obviously you're not looking at a playoff game. But this is the kind of stuff that turns playoff series. Like I mentioned this after the Magic loss to the Kings, 109-107, turned on a couple late calls, turned on a couple missed shots in the last second. Playoff series turn on little things. So the Magic are down 0-1. They took a bad loss. They took a tough loss, not a bad loss, but a tough loss. How do you answer? This was one of my bigger points coming out of Saturday. It's like Saturday's game is done and in the past. You can lament the officiating, you can lament missed shots. It's done. The question in the playoffs is how do you respond? How do you get better? How do you make good? How do you make good on it? And that is, I think, the ultimate question. This game Wednesday, to me, honestly, is so important. And again, Golden State's going to be on a back-to-back. That they need wins too. They're going to be desperate for wins too. So don't overlook, it's Steph Curry, it's Klay Thompson, it's Draymond Green, it's the Golden State Warriors. How the Magic respond to the loss on Saturday against a quality opponent, that's going to tell us a lot. And again, this is the kind of game that swings whether the Magic have a successful 5-game little stint here. The next 5 games, though, are also really tough. The Magic closed their season with 5 of their final 7 games on the road. They finished this homestand on Monday. Then 5 of their final 7 are on the road. At New Orleans, at Charlotte next Wednesday, next Friday. Home versus Chicago next Sunday. Then at Houston, at Milwaukee, back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday. Again, throw that road trip into the sun. I hate that back-to-back. And then they play a critical game 2 weeks from Friday against the Philadelphia 76ers before closing the regular season April 14th against the Milwaukee Bucks. And again, that last game of the season can be a little weird, but still very, very important. This 5-game set, this 5-game series the Magic are playing in is there to show that the Magic can still compete with playoff competition, and is there to show that the Magic can respond to defeats against quality opponents. At minimum, splitting the Warriors-Clippers game this week is a must, just for confidence for the postseason. Just for confidence and belief that we can compete with these kinds of teams. It's necessary. It's important. And the Magic got to get that done. And frankly, get it done Wednesday. Like, let's not mess around. Get it done Wednesday against Golden State, and then get it done against the Clippers. Because like I said, the Magic should believe they can beat any team remaining on their schedule. The next 5-game set, that's at New Orleans, at Charlotte, home versus Chicago, at Houston, at Milwaukee, that's going to be about whether the Magic can build and develop on the road. That's whether the Magic can prove to us that they can win quality games on the road. Of the remaining games after this homestand, only that game at Charlotte is against a team that is not currently in postseason contention. Houston is a game back of Golden State for 10th. They're the hottest team in the league right now. They're extremely difficult to play at the Toyota Center. That game is no gimme. Chicago is no gimme. Chicago's played Orlando tough every single game this year. And even though that game is at the Kia Center and the Bulls should have their postseason spot wrapped up, that is not a game to overlook, because bigger picture now, let's zoom out from the 5-game thing. The Magic need every game they can get. Here are your standings as of March 27th. Orlando sits at 42-29. They're a game back of New York for 4th. Getting home court advantage would be a huge plus for this team, no doubt about it. The Magic are a game back of New York for 4th. They are a game and a half back of the Cleveland Cavaliers for 3rd. Very, very realistic that the Magic could still be in contention for the 3rd seed. Their schedule, again, I told everyone this, wait till the end of the homestand. We'll assess the standings. We'll frankly assess the standings then and break down these next 5 games and say, okay, this is what the Magic have to do these next 5 games. If Orlando is spying Cleveland 1.5 games ahead of them, then they got to be a little worried about Indiana 2 games behind them in 6th. Indiana's actually 3 games behind them in the loss column, so that part is good news for the Magic. But and the Magic do have a game in hand on them, I think. Is that 2 games in hand? Let me check that. Let me check my math here. 71 and 73. 2 games in hand, yeah. I think Indiana might be playing right now. I'm not sure. But look, the Magic aren't done with Indiana yet. I would argue Miami's 3.5 back of Orlando for 7th, as well as Philadelphia. Miami's schedule is very home heavy, but Jimmy Butler's still dealing with some injuries. They looked a little rough against the Warriors on Tuesday night. I'm not as worried about Miami anymore, as maybe that's a mistake. At the end of the day, the Magic have to take care of their business. If the Magic win games, the standings will take care of themselves. They will end up where they are supposed to end up. The Magic have their play-in spot secured. They seem very, very likely. They got 11 games left. They're up 3.5. They're up 4.5 with 11 games to play. Their magic number to clinch a top 6 seed is now 8. So they're getting closer. They're getting closer to that, and it's gonna, it feels like 8 magic number of 8 with 11 to go. That number's going to erase pretty quickly. They will probably have their play. Honestly, if I'm going to predict, they will probably have that play-in spot wrapped up either on the road trip in Charlotte or that home game against Chicago. Like, it's going to happen pretty quickly here. And maybe that's not super quickly, but it's going to happen here within the next week to week and a half. Orlando's just got to focus on themselves. And that's why, you get real deep into the weeds here. That's why this 5-game approach is probably the right way for this team to approach things and get ready for the playoffs, because they have a big game Wednesday. It's a game that I think the Magic do have to win. They have a big game Friday, obviously, another good challenge for them. And then they got to take care of their business here coming down the stretch, and especially as they get on the road here at the end of the season. As the Magic get ready for that big game, though, a big question mark is above them. We'll talk about some injury concerns as the Magic get ready for the Golden State Warriors. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Amazon Fire TV. Look, we all have so many streaming options, but Amazon Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, from March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver who likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check it out today at shopnissanusa.com. All right, we do have a little bit of Orlando Magic news that could very well affect some things as the Magic play this very big game against Golden State Warriors. I'm not going to sit here and overblow the game. I mean, it's every game's big at this stage, but it feels like I've talked myself into it. It's a very, very important game for the Magic to win tonight against the Warriors. But the Magic do have some injury news. Gary Harris and Caleb Houston both did not participate in practice over the last 2 days. Gary Harris is dealing with a plantar fascia issue, which is very, 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 very bad. Not anything like serious, any surgery or anything, but plantar fascia issues tend to be very difficult to treat, and you just kind of have to rest it to get rid of the pain. And Caleb Houston is dealing with a sprained ankle. Both are listed as questionable for Wednesday's game. But having said that, Gary Harris is probably as important as any player on the team right now, and that's kind of weird to say. But the Magic starting lineup with Gary Harris in the lineup, especially since the All-Star break, has been absolutely killer. They're 11-0 as a starting group. They've been, I think, 10-0 since the All-Star break. When the Magic have had their most success this year, it's been because they've had lineup stability. It's because Anthony Black and Goga Batadze were able to establish themselves in that starting lineup, and the rotations were very, very set. They had good balance. They were, defended well. They shot the ball well. When the Magic went through their 2 winning streaks, their 2 5-game winning streaks lately, they had stability. The lineups were pretty set. Everyone knew their roles. Everyone played their roles. They executed well. It's not rocket science. If you know who you're playing with, you know what to do. And while, yes, you have to be able to play through it because injuries happen, but disrupting that apple cart certainly hurts. And it certainly is a major factor for this team. I've often described this Magic team as a little bit like a house of cards, or it's like a Jenga tower. Removing a piece from that tower makes it wobbly. And always remove the bottom piece first if you're playing Jenga. Don't be a wimp. But removing pieces makes the whole thing kind of wobbly, and sometimes it does indeed fall. Sometimes it does indeed collapse a little bit. You look at the game against the Kings on Saturday, the Magic disrupted both their playing groups, and it had some major consequence. They started Cole Anthony they started Caleb Houston in that second half. And look, Caleb Houston is a good shooter, but he is really streaky right now. And he takes a lot of threes. And I think defenses, even though Caleb Houston is a capable shooter, defenses are willing to bet that he's not going to make shots. That, especially when we get to a playoff series, if Caleb Houston has to play, I do think that if Houston has to play, teams are going to let him shoot a couple and see if he's hitting. If he hits 2 or 3 in a row, then they'll start getting out on him a little bit more. But if he's 1 for 3, 1 for 4, they're going to be like, go ahead and shoot. Be 2 for 8, be 3 for 9. That's fine. That's less defense in the paint. We can still clog the lane. That's even though Caleb Houston's not a bad shooter. Not having Gary Harris, who is a much more reliable shooter, is a big deal. If Harris or Houston can't go, and the Magic finished the game on Caleb Houston started the game Saturday. Gary Harris missed the game Saturday. Cole Anthony ended up starting the second half. Orlando gave up a 13-0 run, went scoreless for 5 minutes before the bench group came in. It mattered. And Cole Anthony's not a bad shooter either. But if Gary Harris can't start for a little while, it's going to be real interesting to see what Jamal Mosley does, because I think Caleb Houston can fill in. I think Anthony Black can fill in, although you lose some shooting prowess there. Honestly, I think it might be time to start tightening rotations. I think it might be time to say, okay, let's play 9 guys instead of 10. And honestly, I think for some of these big games, even though it's tougher to control minutes, I think you start Jonathan Isaac. Like I said the other day, the Magic need as much Jonathan Isaac as they can get. He is that much of a game changer. And frankly, I think that's the direction you go, even if you lose a little bit of speed on the perimeter. And I have my concerns about Franz playing the 2, although they've been alleviated a little bit this year with how well he's played defensively overall and how well the Magic have been as a defensive unit too. I think that the Magic got to get into the habit of not trying to preserve rotations as much. And like I said, that matters. they got to make sure they have players they can trust. And, a lot of people ask me, like, why isn't Jett Howard playing these minutes? Jett Howard hasn't played all year. Jett Howard is staying in the G League this year. That is his development path this year. His development plan this year is to play in Osceola. He's killing in Osceola. He's averaging like 18, 19 points per game, shooting 37, 38, 39% from three. He's having a really good season in the G League. And hopefully next year he can fill in this spot. He can play these spots. And the Magic do trust him a little bit more. But he hasn't played all year. He's not an option. Like, frankly, Jett Howard is not an option. Anthony Black has played all year, and I think that he is still a viable option, but he's someone you got to keep on a short leash. If his shot isn't falling down, if, he really struggled in the games against New York and Indiana, just for the first time all year, frankly, he just looked like a rookie. He looked a little overwhelmed by what was going on. And so all of a sudden, like, you start running out of options. Like Cole Anthony, I don't think should be a starter. I think he's really important in that bench role. Jonathan Isaac, you take him off the bench. Now you got to replace those minutes. You do that with Chuma Okeke. Do you up Joe Ingles? Do you play Franz there a little bit more? Do you play Paolo there a little bit more? These are some of the questions the Magic do have to start answering, because they do have to start playing or gearing up for a playoff rotation. I don't think we have seen the Magic play a playoff rotation yet. Paolo's minutes are still hanging around 34, 35. He's probably going to be up around 36, 37, 38. Franz is still around 32, 33, 34 minutes. He's also going to have to be up around 38. And frankly, when we get to the playoffs, the Magic can't have any lineup that doesn't have one of Paolo or Franz. Like, plain and simple. When we get to the playoffs, one of Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner have to be on the floor at all times. And again, like I said, it's going to be really tough to keep Jonathan Isaac off the floor. The Magic it's going to be really tough to keep Jalen Suggs off the floor. We're going to see Jalen Suggs, I think he's still playing only 32 minutes a game. He's got to be up around 35, 36. And so this is all a roundabout way of saying, like, yes, the Magic are going to, if Gary Harris is out, and remember, he is questionable at this point. If he is out again on Wednesday, the Magic probably need to start thinking about, okay, let's see what a playoff rotation looks like. Let's see what lineups we can get away with. And obviously Golden State's a really tough team to test things out on, because their offense can be very potent. It's Stephen Curry after all. But the Magic do have to prepare themselves for the playoffs, and they're a little thin at guard. I know people don't think they're overloaded with guards, but they're a little thin on valuable guards. You could start Markelle Fultz. I wouldn't be against that either, but he takes away a lot offensively for as much as he gives you on defense. At this point, rotations are about trust. No doubt about that either. The reason why Anthony Black's not playing is it's not that he isn't trustworthy, but he's a rookie. He hasn't quite earned that trust, and he looked a little short when he got the opportunity the last time. So it'll be interesting to see what the Magic do at guard. And obviously, I think it's time to start piecing together some playoff rotations and playoff ideas a little bit more. So something to keep an eye on for this important game on Wednesday. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them we sell on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. Be sure also to check out my Patreon page. You can find my analysis of the 5-game breakdown free post on my Patreon page at patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub. And as always, I thank you for your support. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on YouTube, as well as now on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Now that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.